All right, we're live. Today, 2022. This is our weekly developer check-in meeting. We don't have a whole lot on the agenda for today, but we will get to it after some introductions. Everyone can share what your name is, where you're from, and if there's something fun you want to share with the group. And then and if the next person could call in. I'm joining from Oakland, California. Today I'm working on some automation tools for the events website. And hopefully I'll have those up afterwards. Tim, I elaborated a little bit in the last meeting, but I can share them with you when we're done here if you're curious.
Sure.
Let's go with Alejandro.
Hi, I'm Alejandro Argipiano online. I'm joining from Westminster, Colorado. Robert?
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California. And Tim.
Okay, I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim in Deerwood, Minnesota. And Jen, just so you know, your connection seems to be a little unstable.
Really?
I don't know if the other guys noticed that, but
Yes.
Yeah. Not sure if there's anything I can do. If it becomes a problem, there is a theoretically less good Wi-Fi option I could try if the more good one becomes less good.
Sure.
So
It
yesterday
might-
there was a truck
it might-
out here, so
it might have been temporary. Yeah.
yeah. But let me know if I get frozen and don't notice. Oh, I might not. Well, I'll keep. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
All right. So in the last week, we do have one new contrib module. It is the print module. So the print module for Drupal was ported to Backdrop. We had an early version of it that didn't have an official release, I don't think. And then in Drupal, the print module became marked unsupported. And so the Backdrop team was collaborating with the Drupal team so that when the Drupal version became resupported, the Backdrop version now also includes all of the same security enhancements that are in the Drupal version. And so now its release is out with all of those fixes in it. So for the Backdrop, I think it's an alpha release, but there is a new release available. So if you need print, you can have it, which is great. There weren't any posts in the forum topic, and I think that's because when I checked this morning, instead of having a forum topic for today, we had one for next week. But I checked next week's and there weren't any there either. So if anyone did have anything to add today and the forum topic wasn't there earlier, I apologize for that. I have also now added forum topics through mid-September, so we should not have that happen again if I did it correctly. So sorry about that. Also, if anyone notices the topic is missing, you're welcome to create one for that week. If there's something very important you want on the agenda, we will check all of the recent topics when we go there. So sorry about that. I did, however, work on a issue yesterday that I think I would like some feedback on. It's issue number 4029, and this is adding a user account comparison visibility selection. So if you're placing a block on a page and you want it to compare two different user accounts, so like, am I looking at my own profile page? I'll compare my user account to the page I'm looking at. That's the most common use case. There are, of course, a bunch of other cases where you might want to compare two users, like if you had an author context and you want to know if you were the author, maybe you'd show something that way. So we're trying to figure out how to provide a user interface for people to figure out how to specify the two user accounts that's not completely confusing. And so what I ended up doing is Tim made some suggestions, Gregory made some suggestions that all looked really hard to implement based on the current selection tool that we have now. And so I implemented something a little different where I just assumed the first user we're comparing to is always the logged in user account. And so I could reduce the number of questions we're asking to one. So it basically says, which user account should I compare to the currently logged in user? And I think it makes a little more sense the way it is now, rather than asking two questions that are really similar that the person doesn't really care which one is which anyway. They just want to know if they're the same or not. But I could definitely use some help with the language around the labeling for the questions, the available answers for the questions, the description text for the block once it's placed on the page. And then the end result is a rule that's called user compare, user account compare, and that might also want to be updated if it's something like, am I logged in or not? Or I don't know, like there's just a bunch of terminology that is a little confusing. And if anyone could look at those screenshots and identify something that you think could be clearer, I would love just more eyes on that. So in the last comment on that thread, there are 2 screenshots of the configuration interface and the description text on a block. You can look at those, or you can try it in the sandbox and see what it feels like there. But I think it makes more sense than it did before, and it was easier to implement than the better suggestions.
Sure.
So I'd love some feedback on that.
I think that's pretty clear. I like the screenshot, the last one that you have there in that issue. I think it makes a lot of sense. My only question was, you changed logged in to, I think current user was there before, and now it's logged in user. Someone who's not logged in is an anonymous user, and it's a current user. So I'm not sure if this comparison also applies to anonymous users.
I don't know if it would apply for anonymous users, but the problem with current is that it can be the currently logged in user, or it can be the current page you're on. And so I had a hard time identifying which current was current, like whether it was the currently logged in one or the currently loaded one or the current whatever. Like there could be any number of currents. And so if there's another word that's more specific, I'm open to those too. I just used logged in because it seemed more specific than current, which could apply to the page you're on as well as the
Right.
person who's logged in.
So when you say current could apply to the page you're on, you mean like the author, or
like
the
the
author
current
of the
page, like so if you're on user 10 as the page you're on, right, that could be
Okay.
the current user. Which one's the current user? Is it the current user you're looking at, or the current user you're I just got confused. So yeah, words are hard. I'm not sure there is a good option here to figure this out, but I'm definitely open to any suggestions you might have.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at some of the other visibility conditions there, and trying to see if there's any language that may apply.
I was thinking that tokens used current user as the.
Right.
I'm trying to pull up the list right now.
Yeah.
Things are slow.
I think from because of tokens, that my assumption, but not everybody is going to be familiar with tokens, but my assumption is current user is the logged in user. Yeah, but I understand the problem there, and I can see where that might be an issue.
So we also in that pull request changed some other instances of current user to logged in user to make it consistent, but those were all around access checking because there were a bunch of other uses in the layout system. If we find other things like tokens do it better, I would be okay with changing everything to be consistent to match whatever tokens are doing. Or if we find that whatever we land on for this one is better, we can also change the human visible labels for tokens. We obviously can't change the actual token values, but we could put some description text in there if that was helpful too. So I like consistency, but I think in this issue we have an opportunity to go either way with the consistency. So we can fix it.
Right, I'm looking at the description of the token, and the name is current user, but the description is tokens related to the currently logged in user. So I think the word logged in is used in that context too. So it may make sense to change that.
We could also just call it the currently logged in user everywhere too. It's more words. Right. But if people are going to be familiar with that from other places, I think that's also okay. Although it would be the currently logged in user count. So
lots of adjectives.
Yeah. But hey, we're getting nice and specific, so that's what I wanted, right? Okay. Other things on our agenda for today, that was the only open Q&A
Okay.
item I had, but anyone else?
And I
Well-
think there's, go ahead.
I was going to suggest, I'm going to share my screen really quick. Since we're talking about this, and I'm trying to give feedback on the fly, which is a little bit dangerous, but for some reason, this middle block is bothering me a little bit. It's confusing me. And I think it would be possible to move that to the end. So you see your current user, then you see, okay, check display if the, maybe not. Okay, maybe I need to just play with this before I try commenting. But for some reason, that middle part, I do, in general, I think you're on to the right solution. But I'm still a little bit confused. But I think this little middle box is still going to confuse people a little bit, and I need to come up with a constructive suggestion.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I struggled with that a little bit too.
for a second, I was thinking, and maybe this will turn out to be okay. For a second, I was thinking to just move that to the end would help, but I need to think more about the relationship between those two, and maybe it doesn't. Just because I thought that maybe making that bottom choice would help me understand the second block, but I'm not sure that's true.
I think we could also, like, because the options in the bottom block say the same as the logged in user account, we might not need user account to compare to the logged in user account as the label. That might just be a little overwhelming, where if it was like user account to compare, you're like, okay, this is the one I'm comparing to. And your two options are like, is it logged in or is it not logged in? That might be more clear with less explanation.
Yeah, that could be.
But yeah, I also struggled with a little bit of the order, because that last question is like negate or not, is what the actual question is. So I had to like rework it around a little bit to try and make it match the.
Well, the problem in trying to react to this on a screenshot and not visually is that I immediately assumed that this first block was the user account compare. Well, that's the visibility condition. That's not part of the new form.
Yeah.
And that would be obvious to me if I were doing this on the site, because the rest would show up after. But when I look at it together, it's a little bit more confusing. So, anyways, I'll look. I'm interested in this issue, and I'll try to make a point to say something constructive.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to mention also there's a related issue that I did some work on yesterday, and it's the ability of layouts to detect whether there are enough contexts for a visibility condition. For example, for this particular visibility condition, you need 2 users. If you don't have 2 users, this should not appear. For example, when you're viewing the homepage, unless you actually add a user in the context manually, this should not appear. So I was wondering if Jen, if you could take a look at that one sometime and see what you think.
Is that issue 4594?
That is. Yeah, it's actually linked in this other issue.
Visibility conditions available when one of
There.
2 required contexts are missing.
Yeah, 4594. Yes, you're right.
Okay.
And I submitted a PR for that.
Okay, great.
yesterday.
Great. I'll have a look at that.
I was also wondering about some of the RTBC issues that don't have milestones. I'm finding that I'm not sure it's taking a long time for those to get milestone. Is that the usual procedure, or are we supposed to be actually assigning milestones to these? Because there's like 5 or 6 that I've done recently, and Indie has actually reviewed them, and a couple of those are marked RTBC, but
most core committers do check the RTBC queue even if there's no milestone.
Okay.
And when something gets merged, it will get added to the milestone it'll be released in. So when it gets merged, it'll get a milestone if it doesn't have one already. I don't know if all core committers look at the RTPC queue. Some of them might look at milestones. And if that's the case, then it's likely that those would get missed. So if you can get a milestone added, that's good. It takes two people to do it, but if you have like you and Inigo Zeller reviewing an issue, that should be fine. If one of you adds, I think this should be in a milestone, and the other one agrees, you can add the milestone. So yeah, I think that's true for all, whether it's a new feature or
Bug fix.
bug fix. But if it's a new feature, it would also need a advocate. But as long as there's two people on that issue, it can go into the milestone. So you
I
should
see, yeah.
on there.
I thought you needed a third person to, I mean, we do have milestone bug, but we don't have the number of the milestone. I thought the third person needed to add that, but that's not the case.
No, if one person adds milestone bug, a second person can add the milestone number if they agree.
And can they be the one of the persons who submitted the PR?
Yeah, as long as it's a different person that added the label.
I see, okay.
Any two people, but we actually, on the milestone on the page, we say that we have an exception where if something's RTPC, so this is bug fix release milestones, and it gives the criteria, but it says one exception. If the issue has a pull request in a near ready state that has earned the RTPC, then the milestone can be added even by the same person. So that tells me that you could go ahead and milestone them yourself if somebody else has RTPC them.
Yeah.
If it's a bug fix.
Yeah.
If it's a bug fix, yeah. Well, that's what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yes, good to know, yes.
Jen, does that?
I think that's the first.
I think we missed, we lost you.
We lost you, Jen.
Sort of,
You're back.
yeah. Am I
We didn't
back?
hear what you said.
I said, in order for an issue to reach RTPC, it means that a second person has to look at it. So I think the whole like requirement of two people thing isn't necessarily about who adds the label or not. Just we don't want one person creating an issue, filing a pull request, marking it RTPC, and putting it into the next milestone without anyone else reviewing it, which some of us might be tempted to do. If that were allowed.
Yeah. Well, the others, but the others, we can get an issue into the milestone queue without being RTPC. If, you know, two people agree to it, that's the main thing. Okay, I'm sorry. Jen, you're frozen again.
Ask on Zulip or in this. No.
Yeah, now we see you moving, say something.
Hi. 'Cause I can't tell when I frozen because you guys don't freeze. So like I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I don't even know what I was gonna say, but
Okay.
sounds like we've got it covered.
I think so.
Okay. Great. So
I think you were saying that one thing some people do is that they just go in Zulip and they say, can somebody add this to the milestone? So Archipiano,
Yeah.
if that's not something you've done before, it's something I see some other people do a lot.
I
Which is-
tried that. I've tried it a couple of times, no results.
Usually I think it works, and I have done it, you know, I've responded and helped out a few times, but I do want to review the issue usually before well, if it's RTPC, I don't know if I would even worry about it. I might just milestone it. But
Right. There's a couple that are related to views handlers, and then one related to layouts. And
yeah, if you put a views handler in the title, I'm not even going to look. I'm just scared. Now I'm getting better, so there might be a time in the near future where I look at that issue. But if you want to coach me, I'm welcome. And I can't tell if Jenna is just really quiet or if she froze again. I think she froze.
she's froze.
She's frozen.
Yeah, she's frozen.
And she's gone.
I think she left and is coming back or something because
back.
you're back. Okay, let's see if
I don't
that
think
helps.
it's my internet. My whole Zoom just crashed.
Okay.
Maybe it'll feel better now.
That leaving and coming back solves most of my problems with Zoom. Not with life, but Zoom.
It just crashed and then I restarted it. We'll see. Should I
What's
try
next?
moving on? Okay, so I was just gonna go to the 123 milestone. We have a couple of exciting new features slated for 123, first of which is entity reference module. Last week, it doesn't look like it's got any updates since last week, but last week we were talking about it looking reasonably close. There's a lot of kind of crufty old code in there, but it's all working. And so I think everybody's indication is just to just put it in since we have something that's working and we can clean it up later as needed. And I think that will make the what reference module do I use problem much easier for people. Also, entity reference being the most popular contrib module in Drupal 7 will make it a lot easier for people who are upgrading. So all around, I think it's the right decision, and I'm excited to see it so close.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with everything you said. I just want to comment on a personal scenario, which is I have a backdrop site in mid-development where we used a term reference field. And now we want features that are specifically available in entity reference on a new field. And it seems weird to have both of them going. So I asked this question, and I think Archie Piano's already chimed in on it in the forum, which is if I, if I've got a bunch of, this is an upgrade site. So the term reference field is from Drupal 7. And so there's all of this term reference data. And so if we add an entity reference, or if we add the entity module and we do the upgrade, is there not? Actually, maybe it's easier to upgrade it from Drupal into, or maybe not, I don't know. I'm not necessarily looking for an answer on this call or this meeting today. If anybody has a recommendation, I think Archie Piano, you pointed me towards that module, which is designed to port data from an existing backdrop site, a node or a user reference into entity reference. And I think there's a lack of clarity.
I think it was someone else. I don't think it was
it
me.
wasn't
I
you.
think it
Maybe
was
it was
DW
Robert.
Panda.
Oh, okay. Or possibly Robert, I don't know. But apparently there is a module which ports user and node data into entity reference. But there's a lack of clarity on whether or not it works for term reference.
I have done that before, Tim, in a custom update hook.
Mhm.
I could send you. You need to know like the field names of the old one and the new one, but it would basically allow you to create a new field with a new field name and then migrate the data from the old field into the new one. And it was a term reference. It's now an entity reference, but you have all the same data. But just keep in mind that there's a lot of features you don't get from entity reference that you do get from term reference that we haven't figured out yet. So make sure that you can do everything you need to do with entity reference with taxonomy terms. Like it can't handle the like tagging interface and stuff like that. So
well, the reason we actually wanted entity reference is we want the drop down. We want to be able to use a view to pick which entity, and that's only available in entity reference.
Yeah. So. Yeah, there's benefits to each that we don't have in both yet. But we do have a long-term plan to make sure that everything gets into entity reference. So I think moving entity reference isn't the wrong move, but I would say because it's not there yet, just make sure you don't need any of the user interface stuff for terms that we don't have ready for entities.
And I believe that we believe that they will work side by side, right? So
yes. Yeah, they will, because term reference is going to stay in core for a while. Right. Until we get all the stuff we need in entity reference. And right now, obviously there are plenty of Drupal 7 sites running entity reference with term references also because that's been in core for forever. So there shouldn't be any problem having them both.
Right. And even I was looking a little bit into entity reference, and it has a selection handler that allows you to, if you refer to taxonomy terms, it will actually save in the correct table. So if you do update to a taxonomy term, that will actually be modified in the table itself. So it has a specific handler for taxonomy terms. So I think there's a lot of flexibility there.
Okay.
That's great.
Well, I think we're going to be getting a lot of these questions once we make this move. A lot of people will. So we might want to do a little special FAQ or something about entity reference once we move it into core to just save a lot of answering the same questions over and over.
All right. Anything else on entity reference? There's a sub issue here, or related issue 5633, to separate out term reference, since we're talking about term references, from taxonomy module. So that's been a part of taxonomy for a really long time. I think that the request here, Tim, is so that you could disable term reference module if you didn't want term references on your sites. That's sort of a perfect fit to, I think, what you're describing, prevent anyone from adding any new term references.
Right.
Right now, without the separation, you'd have to turn off taxonomy in order to get rid of that, which means you'd lose your term references anyway. And so this will just separate the ability to have the reference field separate from the taxonomy system as a whole. So I think it sort of makes sense.
Good. So somebody had come up with a bug in the entity reference, and I think we were deciding whether or not that was significant enough to slow us down. But did that? I think I saw a pull request come in.
Right. There were 3 pull requests that Herdle merged in the last week or so.
Right.
But I don't think those changes were actually
Okay.
pushed
Got it.
into the PR that's currently sitting there for Backdrop. So,
That's right. So he thinks he fixed the problem in the contrib module, but he hasn't fixed it in the PR yet.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and those were, I think, one of them was related to migrated or upgraded sites from Drupal 7. There was some legacy stuff there that needed to be fixed, and the other 2 were because the entity reference in Backdrop doesn't use ctools, so whoever ported this actually adopted that, and so there were a few cases that were kind of overlooked that produced some notices, PHP notices. And I discovered it when I was working with organic groups, because organic groups uses entity references and define some handlers. So when you disable organic groups, the entity reference started just throwing some notices because it was missing some of the plugins.
Great.
Yeah, that was fixed in the config.
Great. Okay, so next on the list is field group in core. I have a first draft of a pull request that gets field group module in core, and it does one small user interface improvement, and it takes the button for configuring your field group and turns it into a drop button for configuring it, and it behaves more like a field setting. So if you click the configure link, it goes to a separate page and asks you for all of the settings on your field, and then you click save and it takes you back to the first page. It's your field listing, which is how a field would behave. Field group previously just sort of shoved the form directly into that page, so it was a very different user feel than the rest of fields. So I made it feel more like the rest of fields, but there's still a lot that could be done to improve. And the main question I have is on this ability to clone a field set. It adds a vertical tab to the bottom of the field UI, which is a little overwhelming, and gives you the ability to clone a field group from a different content type or a different view mode onto the one you're looking at. So it's not like we could add, so the alternative would be you're on the basic page and you click clone field group and it says, which content type do you want to clone this to? And you can say, I want to clone it to post, and then it will put it over there. But I think the way it's set up right now, where if you're on the post type and you're like, I want a field group, and it says, which one do you want? You can choose basic page, makes a lot more sense. We just need to figure out a better interface for adding that isn't a vertical tab on the bottom of the field UI. And there's a couple of recommended solutions in the pull request. One of them is adding an action link that says add field group, which I think sounds good. And then the question is, how much of that do we want on field group before it goes in core? So what we could do is pull off the clone option and move the whole thing to another issue that's like added back in a way that makes more sense. Or we could put it in the way it is now and have the second issue be fix it to make it make more sense. Or we could say we really want it to make sense before it goes in and we don't want to lose the feature, and we try and do that now. We've got some time, so we could try that. And Greg had a pretty good outline of a workflow for what that might feel like. So just some feedback on how much I should work on that before it goes in core would be useful.
When is it
Okay.
slated to go into core? Is
So
do we know that?
What planet are you from?
123 comes out on September 15th, so feature freeze
Okay.
is September 1st.
So field group is also going to core in 123. Is that the plan?
Well, that's
Would
the
be
whole.
nice.
Entity reference and field. No, I thought that we would they were going to tackle entity reference first and then field group.
Well, right now we have different people working on the
Right.
different ones, so I think it's
Yeah.
okay. If all of a sudden I needed an entity reference and Herb's needed on field group, which could happen at any moment. I think Herb is the current maintainer for the field group contrib module too, so there's a lot of crossover. It might slow down one or the other, and we might choose to prioritize entity reference. But right now they're both slated for 123.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we should clarify to RGPiano that slated simply means that we aspire to getting it there. Sometimes things are slated for 3 or 4 minor releases before they actually get finished, and we don't consider that to be an awful thing, right? When we make when we add something to a milestone, that doesn't mean that like we're putting a really high expectation that it gets in there. It just means we're trying, right? And hopefully it will.
And I do think entity reference should take priority if we had to choose. I think it's more important, but hopefully we don't have to.
It does make for a pretty exciting release if we got both of these new features in. I think we should plan a big press release.
Right, and then our last issue is allowing an administrator to hide the title on comments. It's issue 4569. We think this one is currently stuck, awaiting core committer feedback, just to look at the 2 proposed options and make sure they are both viable, because if one of them was not, we would just go with the other.
So currently there's a contrib module that does this.
Yes, I believe you're the maintainer, aren't you?
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, like what's sort of the philosophy? Is it that the core change shouldn't override what the contrib module does? Or do we need to tell contrib module users, you need to, with this core change, you need to stop using this and redo your configuration to
So
use
I
the
think
recommended core solution? How is that done?
it depends on how close the contrib module solution is to the core module solution. In a perfect world, anyone that was running the contrib module would update to the next version of Backdrop Core, run update.php. It would notice the contrib module was being run, disable it, check the settings, and copy the settings into the core, so that when it was done, the module would be disabled and your site would be functioning exactly the same way it was before. Now that's only possible if the exact same feature that was in contrib got moved into core in the same way. I don't know, Tim, if that's what's happening or not. You would know more than I would. But it's often that there are a lot of settings that the contrib module provides, and we only move a subset of that directly into core. And in that case, the module would need to handle that gracefully, because we don't want to turn it off entirely in case people want all of the rest of the settings. We would just need to figure out some way that it would, we test it ahead of time, make sure your site doesn't explode after you do the update. And then it would either set some kind of a message that's like, you might want to use the core setting instead, or, this setting is deprecated, check the core setting. However the maintainer wants to handle it, would be fine. And I don't know what that would be. If it's possible to have both on at the same time, or if they negate each other, we'd have to look at it more specifically, but.
So it's a really simple contrib module.
Okay.
It sounds
Right.
like the avenue of what you described of having an update hook in the core that
Mhm.
pulls the settings and turns it off would be the way to go.
Yeah. And we do have a list of contrib modules in core that already handle this, because we did it with a bunch of stuff as it moved into core. So we just need to make sure that your module gets put into that list so that it knows to turn it off. And then if there's a setting that needs to be renamed or moved to a different file, that would handle in that update hook also.
Honestly, I hadn't thought at all about this yet. I think I started with I think you're maintaining a Drupal port of a module, and I think we looked at that code. It has changed somewhat, and we have changed the settings options a little bit in a way that I don't think is in that module, but I don't know if it's in a way that's incompatible at all. I'd have to look and see.
Yeah.
Right, I'm looking, Robert, your module basically just wipes out the title, just
Yeah.
makes it an empty string, basically. And I think, Tim, that's how you started.
Yeah, it
We
is
had
how
some
I
issues
start.
with screen readers, I think, and just
Yeah.
having the screen reader, having empty HTML tags there.
And doing permalinks was another thing. I mean, I think the core change is way better than the module. So
Yeah.
just how to gracefully do the transition. But that's why I think what the module did is a subset of what the core would do now.
Okay.
It should make it easy.
Yeah. That should make it real easy.
Well, if you
I'll
are
take
willing,
I'll take a look at both.
and
Okay.
if you're willing to weigh in on the issue, it would
Yeah.
be helpful to have a few more voices because, Jen and I are losing, and you can help us lose, or you can, or you can join our side.
Or even.
I'm not going to campaign right now.
I'll add this to my queue.
I'm gonna add an update to the minor release checklist to review the list of contrib modules included in core so that we don't accidentally forget, which I think we've done in the past. So just reminding me.
So I see that's got two pull requests. Are they competing, or is the second one now preferred?
They're competing. We need your feedback.
Yes, one of them is the CSS override option, and one of them is just changing modifying the template, which a number of contrib themes have already overridden. So the change won't get into those contrib themes unless they're modified. So. Anyways, okay. They're competing PRs, both of them written by me.
Split personality.
Well, just trying to make everybody happy. That's what I do. Well, is there anything else urgent for the last few minutes of this meeting?
I don't think so.
I had a quick question for Robert, if you don't
Go
mind. That what happened to the bundle cache or the bundle cache? I think that was RTBC, or
Yeah.
we had some discussion last week, and I don't think we came to a conclusion. I don't know.
I thought we all decided we liked the current
Okay.
proposed solution, and we were just waiting for core committers to check it out.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely made me really nervous when I saw the code, and I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. It's like this much code.
Right.
Like, and tests. This is perfect. It's exactly what we need in core. Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else on the agenda, there's something I could mention,
Sure.
Mhm.
which the little project I've been working on, which I don't know if you had a chance to look at, Jen, or not. But excuse me. And you may have some strong feelings about this, so I'd like you to at least think about it and get back to me. I went ahead and set up this site. The original idea, the impetus is that I find it one a little bit hard to sort of search and maintain and compare projects with releases and those without releases. It's like navigating through unreleased modules on GitHub is a bit more of a challenge than it is in backdrop.org, but backdrop.org only has the release modules. Also things like we don't track maintainers and things like that. So I was experimenting with what we could do with the API, and I set up sort of a site, and I pulled in all of the projects from GitHub. With some help, I got some great code from BW Panda, and basically have a list of all of the projects in GitHub. And
Great.
this is sort of related, and but there's really no good way that I can think of, and I'm open to ideas, to scrape the maintainer data. So I've been manually adding it with a little bit of help from some other people. And I've got 200 projects already of the 926 projects. My motives here are really just to experiment and play with this. This could stay an independent site. Some of these features might, once we played with it, we might decide what's important and pull that into backdrop.org. I don't think we'd want all of this for sure in backdrop.org, but this is a good way to just sort of play around and experiment with it. So I welcome people to take a look at it and get back to me. It does give us the ability to see things like, have a complete list of all the different maintainers we have and see how many different modules RGPiano. So some people are getting underrepresented based on the ones I've done so far.
Right.
Other people, Indigozella jumped in and helped out tag hers. So Indigozella has a whole ton of projects because she went and helped tag hers. So she's got 36 projects.
So did she edit it herself, or did you?
She did herself, and I did set this up so anybody can log in right now.
Oh, I see. Oh,
and just edit those fields. Basically, like most of the fields are not editable because they're part of the feed, but the maintainer is not part of the feed. So if you log in, you'll be able to edit any of these notes. The maintainer field. Also, I created, I'm not sure if I want to keep this a community tags field, which is just arbitrary tags that anybody can put in for a project. And that may or may not be helpful in the end. We do have tags in the .info files, but one of the so few projects have used them. One of the benefits of doing this is I can easily generate a report of all the sites that have used them and all the sites who haven't. And we can, submit some pull requests for the ones that haven't.
This is great.
Right. So I think we'll be able to use this data in a lot of interesting ways, once we kind of have it together. And I just love for people to take a look. Right now I'm playing with a feature where people can log in and favorite their favorite modules. Whether or not we keep that, I don't know. But I like to just, once I've got this data in here, it's fun to experiment with different features and see, again, whether or not this stays its own site or whether or not, like that I just manage because the community doesn't want to take on the overhead of managing a site like this. That's one option, but I'm happy any of the data that we want to, or features that like seem really valuable here that we want to pull back into backdrop.org, we can.
Yeah, I feel like this is just making me be like, oh my God, we're going to see so many things we need on backdrop.
Well, that's the downside is that we were blissfully unaware of problems that
maybe not blissfully.
that we will now be able to see clearer. But I'm running into interesting examples. Like there are a few projects that I found at least one project that's completely empty, and there have been some projects that have been deprecated. And having a list like this will give us the ability to maybe more productively figure out what to do with some of those projects. Mm-hmm. Should we just be deleting them, or should we be? But sort of having an easier way to find them makes it easier to make those decisions. So
yeah. So did you do this from the GitHub project feed?
I did not use the GitHub project feed. Basically, the quick history is I opened an issue in the backdrop.org issue a couple months ago saying that we should have a feed of all the data we have. And BW Panda said, well, anybody can get that data already from GitHub.
Yeah.
And he gave me a code snippet that he had actually worked out, which actually gets it directly from the GitHub feed without using the module. I discovered.
I was asking is if you were just getting it.
So I'm getting it directly with the code, and I've modified the code quite a bit. But this is a direct request of GitHub, not using. There is a GitHub API module for Backdrop, which I discovered as part of working on this project. Like, oh, what is this module here? And I think that's the module that was developed for Core.
Or so that one would allow you to write to GitHub, sure. Which I don't think you need for this purpose. But like, if you wanted to, like what we do is package the releases and attach that to the GitHub. Right. So that's where you need the API access. You have to like prove who you are. But just pulling the data from a public feed, I think is exactly what you need here. So I think this is great. Yeah.
And I'm able to get quite a bit of data, not everything I wanted. Things like the number of releases is not in the main feed. So you have to do a secondary call to the releases. And then it doesn't, even in that, it doesn't have the total. So you basically just have to total them up. And so I'm interested in things that people would like me to parse out. There's a few things like I would like to show the latest release, or should be part of this, or well, I right now, for example, the releases is it's either you have some releases or you don't. So the assumption is anything with some releases is on backdrop.org, but that's not actually true, because again, we do have these modules that have been deprecated. So there might be modules.
Dev releases won't be on backdrop.cms.org or alpha or beta.
Oh, no, alpha and beta releases show up on backdrop.org. Sure.
I think we've been into this before. They aren't supposed to, but I don't think we ever.
Well, that print module you just announced, that's an alpha release.
Yeah. Is it available for?
Yes, it's on backdrop.org.
Yeah, but
Yeah, most of my modules started as alpha and beta. I mean, because I waited for enough people to download them from backdrop.org, and I verified they were there.
Printer-friendly pages right here on the front page, the top one, and it's considered an alpha release. So
yeah. So we decided not to do that because we didn't want someone to install something that was going to make their site explode using a tool that they had no ability to undo. So we decided alpha and beta weren't safe and it had to be in whatever format. But I'm not sure we ever actually added anything to the site to stop that from happening. I think we might have thought that would happen just from the format of the module.
The behavior you described is present if you have because we ran into this very recently. If you have, let's say, version 1.1, and then you create a 1.2 alpha and release it, it doesn't show up as the recommended release on what Tim is showing now. You won't see the higher numbered alpha release. You'll see the lower numbered stable release, because that situation arose just within the last month, I'll say, in one of the modules.
Well, what I was testing, was it possible that the project browser was different than backdrop.org, but this alpha release is showing up in both the project installer and...
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be the same, because you can install a module from backdrop.cns.org even if you don't. No, you can't anymore. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure we should change it, because it's now people are probably used to it this way. But I wonder if putting that limitation into the installer and not on backdrop.cms.org might be a better way to fix it, so we don't have to change backdrop.cms.org.
Okay.
But yeah, that's interesting.
Another thing that the more I play with this, the more I realize that we need to, I think it's really valuable to have released and unreleased modules available in one place, but we need to be really clear about which ones aren't released, so that people, because some of them are just plain broken, and you might find a way to flag those, like ones that don't work at all. Don't even bother to try this. There's others that will work, but they're not at all stable. And I'd like that to be flagged pretty clearly on there, so nobody can come here and find a module that's in bad shape and install it and not know that that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I kind of, after seeing this, Tim, that makes me want those on backdrop.cms.org too, but in a different area, so that you can't just be search for modules and find it. There would also be some sidebar thing that's we might have an unsupported version of this module, and then you go into some other area of the site that's these are all potentially dangerous, but you can find everything there. I don't know. It feels like could be really valuable. But let's play with your thing. I think there's a whole bunch of other stuff we're gonna want after playing with this for a while too. Sure. So yeah, this is great.
Okay, I think the big question that is do we want to do something to more officially track the maintainers? Should that be part of the .info file or something? Yeah, well,
we have it on GitHub. We just haven't figured out how to get it off of GitHub.
Right.
We know who created each release, right? We could tag even each release with its individual maintainer. If only we could get that data out. And I'm sure it's there somewhere, and we probably can get it out. We just haven't worked on it.
I'll be playing a little bit more with that, so I'll watch and see if I can figure out a way to do that. But even I'm not sure if that will be enough, because some modules have 3 or 4 maintainers, and only one of them cut a release.
Or maybe only one of them ever cuts a release. Yeah, we did have, I think this was in the issue for adding more information to the info file.
Okay.
But yeah, we also have the like human versus machine name thing too, right? Where like we want the GitHub username so that we can do like the single sign-on thing, but we also need the human readable name. Like if we're gonna list a maintainer, it would be nice if we could link that to their profile, So yeah, I think figuring out what data in what format and how to put it where they're all good questions.
Yeah, and I think that this site is going to help us figure out where those holes are that we want to fix. Okay, that's it. So please, folks, kick the tires. Feel free to log in and play with it and give me suggestions.
Backdrop-projects.symbolo.site.
Yeah, I posted links into Zulip, but I can do that again.
Great.
Quick question, Tim. I'm doing some search for, oh wait, that's the description. And no, you can't search by title, by name?
Not right now. I mean, that's a trivial thing to sort of add.
Yeah.
I've been playing with what the right combination of filters are.
Right.
I also I'm not using the search button at all yet, which maybe I should be. Right now, it's just using views filters. If people have ideas that know more about that than me, let me know, like how, what the best way to do searches on a site like this would be. Right now, I'm just using views filters.
Yeah. One thing that I do when I'm using views filters is I'll use a combined fields filter, and I'll put like the 3 most common fields in there, and then it sort of works as like a rough search, at least that's the starting point.
I don't know if I've
also a search filter, but I found it not to work very well.
Okay. I don't know if I've ever done a combined fields filter, so that's good to know that that's possible, and I'll try that. And this one, it would be, for sure the title and the body, or the description. I should change that to like description.
Maybe the project name.
I don't know, and maybe that we would put the tags into that as well. Then I'm kind of debating how to handle tags, because I think having a free tagging option is nice because so few are tagged, but then there's some duplication there. So I don't know if I should just automatically pull in the .info tags into the free tag or whatever. Also, we have project type, which is in a way like a tag. I don't want to have to, the themes on this site, I don't really know what to tag themes with other than theme, but I've already got a theme tag, the project tag. So I wonder if any of you can think of an easy way to say, to automatically like add the project type to the tags if it's not already there without custom code. Is there a module that would do something like that you know of?
Well, if the tags are taxonomy terms, you can't add the same one twice.
No, but they're unfortunately, I'm using the same tags field for the community and the .info tags. I'm not showing the .info tags, but the data is here. The project type is its own taxonomy, and maybe that was a mistake. Maybe I should have made that use the same. That maybe that's what I'll do. And then that might solve the problem. Is if there's only 3 tags in the project type vocabulary, and all 3 of them could legitimately be community tags. So why did I do that? That's dumb.
I don't know. I think having that value is still valuable. Like you might want to be like, only show me layouts, right? But you might have a whole bunch of modules that are tagged with layouts because they add access controls or whatever, plugins or. So I think it's still valuable to have those separate. But you might also add the data into the community tags field too.
Well, yeah, but can I use? What I was thinking I would do is use the same vocabulary. I keep 2 fields, but use the same vocabulary and just limit the project type to only using 3 possible tags. I can do that, can I? Or not? Or will that not work?
I don't see why not. I
Okay.
wouldn't have thought of that.
Well, I didn't before. It just occurred to me now that I could, that might work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you can limit a field to just using certain tags within a
You can
vocabulary.
with entity reference.
Right. which I'm not using yet, but I will have to. Okay.
All right, well, I'm gonna have to run.
Okay.
But very cool project, Tim. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you all for your feedback. This has all come together in like 5 days, so it's still really rough, but I like to get things out early and get feedback early rather than putting a lot of time into things that then, people give me better ideas later. So, okay. Okay,